Thanks, Chairman Krishnamurthy and Ranking Member Cloud, for allowing me to testify today on the youth vaping epidemic and the role of the Food and Drug Administration. The campaign to reduce tobacco use and prevent our kids from a lifetime addiction is personal to me. My father died from lung cancer. He was 53 years old. He smoked 2 packs of Camels a day. And as a young high school student, I'll never forget how he struggled to breathe during my visits to the hospital in his last days. Cigarettes are responsible for 480,000 deaths every year in the United States. My family is certainly not the only one who can tell this story. So ever since I came to Congress, starting in the House, I have dedicated my career in public service to this fight, holding the tobacco industry accountable for its lies and deception, empowering families, schools, and healthcare providers to prevent kids from this addiction, and working to build and strengthen a regulatory framework that really does focus on public health. When last I testified before this subcommittee in July of 2019, it seems so long ago, most of our focus was on the skyrocketing rates of youth e-cigarettes, fueled by the kid-friendly flavors, aggressive promotion, and high nicotine concentration of the product. Since that time, my office, this subcommittee, and the public health community have shown a bright light on the abusive tactics by Juul that contributed to this foothold with our children. We now have uncovered the disgusting tactics used by this company to addict our children on these e-cigarette products. I'm pleased our public health and antitrust regulators have started to step in. But what I want to focus today is the record of the FDA over the last several years and the opportunity that sits before the agency today to correct its missteps in the past and put public health and kids at the forefront of its mission. Flavored e-cigarette products have exploded in popularity among our kids. Nearly 4 million now vaping, a 361% increase in just 8 years when only 800,000 kids were vaping. 1 in 5 high school students use e-cigarettes. These alarming trends are erasing the historic progress we've made reducing youth tobacco use. Who's the cop on the beat to whom we entrust our children? It's the Food and Drug Administration. And this agency has been timid and reluctant for way too long. For years, the FDA delayed implementation of its requirement that companies submit PMTA applications for review. At the same time, the FDA allowed cigarettes to proliferate essentially unregulated, e-cigarettes to proliferate essentially unregulated, failing to enforce its own deeming rule, which required that all new products entering the market after August 8, 2016 undergo a public health review. Since my last testimony, we had a glimmer of hope on that day in September 2019 when President Trump promised to ban all e-cigarette flavors. As part of that, the FDA in January of 2020 had a golden opportunity to finally clear the market of these addictive, kid-friendly products, the vast majority of which were on the market illegally. But instead, the Food and Drug Administration took a half measure, only partially clearing the market and leaving major loopholes for this powerful industry. The result? Kids migrated to these loopholes, to the products that remained unregulated on the market, menthol-flavored e-cigarettes and disposable vaping products. The use of disposable e-cigarettes, one of the loopholes which the FDA lost, which were exempted from the FDA's January 2020 action, increased 1,000% last year. Make no mistake, kids get it. If we don't take this seriously across the board, they will find those loopholes and continue their addiction. And because the FDA allowed menthol-flavored cartridges from Juul and others to stay on the market, listen to this, the use of these menthol-flavored Juul products, cartridges, increased from 11% to 62% of the market. Another failure by the FDA. Now we approach one of the biggest milestones in FDA tobacco regulation history, and I worry the agency is going to fail again. After years of delay by administrations of both parties, the FDA, under court order, finally required e-cigarette and tobacco manufacturers to submit applications for their vaping products on September 9, 2020. This is the long-awaited opportunity for the FDA to apply a public health standard that Congress passed as long ago as 2009 in the Tobacco Control Act to evaluate whether a product can stay on the market and whether it is, quote, appropriate for the protection of public health. That is a high bar. It requires the FDA to balance the risk of youth initiation with potential benefit of adult cessation. And the burden is on the manufacturer. The burden is on the manufacturer to show their products will not lead to youth use, show their products do not harm the user, and to show they actually help adults quit smoking. Remember that claim made over and over again? Prove it. You can't. They know they can't. I'm deeply troubled with what I've heard from the response of the FDA to my letters. I fear they're going to once again overvalue the unproven potential benefit of cessation for adult smokers while undervaluing the clear evidence of what's happening to our kids. Only 4% of adults use e-cigarettes, 20% of high school students. Kids who never would have picked up a tobacco product are vaping. It's simple. Any product with a history of increasing youth use must be rejected by the Food and Drug Administration, especially flavored products that we know hooks the kids. This is a Super Bowl for the FDA's tobacco effort. I'm afraid they're not ready for prime time. I hope they prove me wrong. The FDA recently announced plans to ban menthol cigarettes, an important public health action, and I want to commend the acting commissioner who sits behind me on when she called me with the news. But just like that step, the time is now for FDA to take meaningful action on how it applies public health standards to e-cigarettes. We know FDA's after-the-fact enforcement, warning letters, and perpetual game of whack-a-mole just doesn't work. To put it bluntly, FDA's slow walking and refusal to forcefully act has enabled these e-cigarette companies to addict a new generation of our kids. It's time for the FDA to be a partner in public health, not a partner to big vape, and take these products off the market. As the subcommittee continues to examine the youth e-cigarette epidemic and the role of FDA, I hope we prioritize our kids. Let me close with a personal note. It's been a few years, but I once served in this House of Representatives, in this building, in the House Appropriations Committee. And one day I decided to offer an amendment on a transportation subcommittee bill that I served on to ban smoking on flights of 2 hours or less. Why did I pick 2 hours? Because one of the leaders on the Democratic side in the House Appropriations Committee, Martin Sabo of Minneapolis, was a chain smoker. And I asked him once, Martin, how long could you go without a cigarette? He said 2 hours. And that's what I put in the first bill. Flights of 2 hours or less, ban smoking. What happened afterwards was incredible. Even with the opposition of the House Republican and Democratic leadership, I managed to get this to the floor thanks to a man by the name of Claude Pepper, who was chairman of the Rules Committee, and basically ignored the Speaker's direction to give me a chance on the floor. How about that? I had Bill Young of Florida, Republican, as my co-sponsor. We went to the floor and we won. It shocked everybody that we won. Why did we win? Because it turned out the House of Representatives was the biggest frequent flyer club in America, and they were sick of smoking on airplanes. Well, eventually, we banned it on all flights, going beyond 2 hours. I didn't know it at the time. I really didn't know it at the time. That was the tipping point. At that point, people said to themselves, if it's unsafe, if secondhand smoke is dangerous on an airplane, why is it safe on a train, on a bus, in an office, in a restaurant, in a bar? And the dominoes started to fall. And we're at a much different place in America today because as a junior member of the House of Representatives, I tried something that was considered politically impossible, and it worked. You can do the same thing. You have that power at your hands. I hope you'll use it. I know this hearing is an indication of your interest in the subject. Not only give the FDA the tools, but make them use it if they won't. Bring them around to the side of protecting public health. You'll be glad you did.